That fifth cement truck just shattered the main support beam on my great-grandfather's century-old bridge. And there was Deborah Kensington Price, our HOA president, standing at her kitchen window with a coffee mug, actually smiling, like she was watching a football game, not the slow-motion demolition of something my family had guarded for 4 generations. You know, people talk about evil coming in the dead of night, but sometimes it shows up wearing designer heels, sipping imported coffee, and pretending it's all just community improvement. She thought she had me beat, send truck after truck across my family's hand-built oak bridge until it collapsed, then swoop in with her emergency demolition order and force me to sell the only piece of creekfront land my family had left. What she didn't know, what she could never have guessed, is that I'm a retired Army Corps engineer, and I was about to turn her own corruption into the trap that would destroy her little empire for good. The diesel exhaust was choking out my morning air. My grandmother's china rattled in the cabinet like we were in the middle of a California quake. But watching those stress fractures snake their way through the timber my great-grandfather had carved with his own hands, I wasn't shaking from rage anymore. I was doing math. I was planning. What would you do if your HOA tried to steal generational family land? And by the way, where are you watching from? Let me know. Are HOAs this corrupt where you live, too? Let me back up and tell you how this whole nightmare started. My name is Marcus Thornfield, and 3 months ago, I was just a 52-year-old retired engineering contractor living peacefully on the 40-acre homestead my great-grandfather built back in the 1920s. The place sits along Willow Creek, what used to be a patchwork of pasture and oaks, until the Willowbrook subdivision sprouted up around us, like dandelions in a perfectly manicured lawn, if you know what I mean. The crown jewel of our property was always the bridge, hand-hewn from local oak, built by my great-grandfather, bridging Willow Creek and connecting our home to the main road. 4 generations of Thornfields have crossed that bridge to come home. My grandfather proposed to my grandmother on that bridge. My father taught me to fish leaning over its railings. I carried my wife across it on our wedding day, and years later, I carried my newborn daughter the same way. You can still smell the linseed oil he used to preserve it, and if you run your hand along the rail, you feel every tool mark. Quiet mornings before the invasion, before everything went sideways, you'd hear the creek burbling underneath and honeysuckle on the breeze. Then Deborah Kensington Price slithered into the neighborhood. She was what you get when corporate law merges with suburban dictatorship. Perfectly coiffed hair that wouldn't budge in a hurricane, designer suits just to pick up groceries, and a leather portfolio she clung to like it held nuclear launch codes. She made her fortune bulldozing family farms for developers. 6 months after she moved in, she'd manipulated her way into the HOA presidency. Her very first decree? My century-old bridge was a substandard infrastructure hazard and a threat to property values. Apparently, authentic craftsmanship is bad for business if you're planning luxury developments. I'll never forget our first standoff. Her at my door in a white blazer, legal papers in hand, a smile cold enough to freeze the devil. "Mr. Thornfield, I'm here to help modernize your property." I just looked her in the eye and said, "My property was standing when this was still cow pasture." "Progress waits for no one. Not even your precious antique," she snapped. "Replace it with our approved concrete structure or face $500 in daily fines." Thing is, I didn't tell her the most important part. 20 years in the Army Corps of Engineers teaches you that every structure has weak points, every enemy has vulnerabilities, and every problem can be solved with the right data. When I refused her ultimatum, the cement truck parade began. Suddenly, every construction project in the subdivision needed to route their massive trucks over my bridge. "Sorry, HOA-approved route," the drivers would shrug. But these weren't your average delivery trucks. These were 30-ton cement mixers, making my old oak beams scream. Each pass left new cracks spreading like spiderwebs. The peaceful morning mist was now thick with diesel exhaust and concrete dust. 3 weeks in, Deborah's brother-in-law, the city building inspector, of course, arrives for an emergency safety evaluation. "What are the odds, right?" "Sorry, Mr. Thornfield," he tells me, reading from a script. "The bridge is in immediate danger to public safety. You have 30 days to demolish it, or we'll do it and send you the bill." That night, I sat out on the bridge, listening to my grandfather clock chime midnight. Honeysuckle still sweet, but now mixed with diesel fumes. I traced the weathered rail, and something clicked. This wasn't about a bridge anymore. This was war. And Deborah had just given me her first tactical error, a timeline. Right in the middle of her campaign, my daughter Sarah announced her engagement. She wanted the reception at home, just like her grandparents' golden anniversary. 60 guests, catered dinner by the creek. But if you think Deborah was going to let a family celebration go uninterrupted, you don't know HOA Karens. The morning of the wedding was perfect. Clear skies, scent of my wife's roses, Sarah in her grandmother's lace dress. Then the rumble started. 1, 2, 3, 6 cement mixers, all perfectly timed to roll through during the ceremony. It was like watching a military convoy storm a church picnic. The bridge shook, glasses fell, metals rattled, my 86-year-old mother froze in terror halfway across. The photographer caught it all, guests fleeing, my daughter's day collapsing under diesel and chaos. And there, in her kitchen window, was Deborah, coffee mug raised in a private toast. That was the moment it all clicked for me. Helping a guest to their car, I overheard 2 drivers. Kensington Construction pays double for weekend deliveries. A quick search that night, and bingo, Deborah owns 40% of the company supplying all that cement. Her emergency bridge replacement quote hit my mailbox the next day. $80,000 for a basic concrete span. Meanwhile, I'd contacted the State Historical Society, who appraised my bridge at $150,000 in historic value. Rated excellent condition, even after all those trucks. She was profiting both ways, destroying the bridge and selling the solution. But here's what I learned in the core. Documentation beats accusation every single time. I started building my case like a bridge, systematic, every piece in place. Filed for an emergency restraining order to stop the trucks. My lawyer, Jim Patterson, whose grandma taught mine to can peaches, presented before and after photos showing the bridge was perfectly stable until Deborah's parade began. The restraining order was granted. No more trucks until an independent engineer weighed in. Enter Dr. Amanda Rodriguez from State U, veteran bridge analyst. Her verdict? Classic overload stress, but the original construction is remarkably sound. Someone built this bridge to last centuries, not decades. For a hot minute, it seemed like the system was working. But then Deborah turned to Facebook, posting a public smear. Thornfield's dangerous bridge puts all our children at risk. Overnight, half the neighborhood thought I was a public menace. Round 1, Deborah. She got my restraining order overturned by Judge Hoffman, who, shocker, was her regular golf partner. The trucks were back by Tuesday, rumbling by every half hour, daybreak to sunset. My wife started wearing noise-canceling headphones. Neighbors avoided me. Anonymous complaints piled up, unlicensed bridge operation, noise violations, you name it. Wednesday, they sent a concrete pumper so massive it sagged the bridge 6 inches. I filmed the whole thing. The driver just shrugged. Lady pays the bills, lady calls the shots. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Insomnia breeds inspiration sometimes. In the Army, we learned that when facing a superior force, you don't hit head-on. You find the weak spot and exploit it. Thursday morning, I dug through the county courthouse archives. Mrs. Henderson, the clerk, remembered my grandfather from the farming days and loved to help. Together we found the original 1923 survey. The bridge had perpetual right of passage written right in. It predated the HOA's easement by 60 years. I remembered something from overseas. Grandfather writes, "First structures trump everything that comes after." I spent the rest of the day in the law library. Turns out the HOA's power didn't apply to my bridge at all. Their whole case was built on sand. I called in Elizabeth Morrison, a local historian. She came out Saturday, ran her hands over the joinery, and practically swooned. Museum-quality work, state preservation qualified. Once we filed, any demolition would need environmental studies and public hearings. The red tape alone could choke a horse. Sunday, I called an emergency HOA board meeting, just not at Deborah's place. We met at Jake Morrison's house, his wife's apple pie warming the room. I spread out the survey and explained, if Deborah keeps this up, it's not just wrong, it's illegal, and the whole board is at risk. You should have seen the color drain from their faces. By Monday, 3 board members had quietly peeled away from Deborah, but she doubled down. Tuesday night, the community center was packed. She'd filled it with worried homeowners, whipped up with flyers showing crumbling bridges that didn't even look like mine. She declared my property commercial, hit me with $75,000 in retroactive fees, and threatened forced sale. I sat in the back, watching neighbors nod like sheep. When it was my turn, I walked up, plugged in my laptop, and let the 1923 survey fill the screen. "This predates your HOA by 60 years, I said. Grandfather writes. The room went quiet, except for a nervous cough and the hum of old lights. Then I showed Elizabeth's historic designation. Then, here's the kicker. I pulled up luxury condo plans filed 6 months before Deborah moved in, under her maiden name. Bank loans using my land as collateral. The crowd turned. Patricia Walsh, a board member, demanded, "Did you disclose these plans when you joined?" Deborah stammered. I moved for a vote of no confidence. In less than 10 minutes, Deborah Kensington Price was out. But cornered animals don't surrender, they get desperate. 3 days later, I get a call from Mrs. Henderson. She'd found an even older map from 1919 showing the original water rights. Turns out, my great-grandfather secured development, access, and environmental rights for the whole creek. Every house in Willowbrook was built on fraudulent water access claims. The HOA had been selling and managing resources they didn't legally control. When I showed Jim Patterson, my lawyer, the map, he said, "Marcus, you're not holding leverage. You own the game board." I pulled together my team. Legal, engineering, historical, environmental experts. Everyone had a job. Jim filed a quiet title action. Elizabeth rallied the Historical Society. Amanda documented the bridge's real condition. Dr. River from State U cataloged the protected salamander habitat under the creek. We assigned roles, installed trail cams, and rehearsed the town hall showdown. For 3 weeks, we built our case while Deborah spun out of control. She responded by launching lawsuits, slander, public safety, emergency demolition. Then the trail cams caught board member Stephen Walsh sabotaging my bridge at 2:30 a.m. Loose bolts, drilled holes, the works. The irony? They were finally making the bridge dangerous to prove it was dangerous. I didn't move a thing, just called Jim. By Wednesday, anonymous social media posts accused me of being a violent, unstable vet. By Thursday, Deborah tried to get my wife fired from her bank job, claiming irregularities in our mortgage. That crossed a line. Friday, a county demolition crew showed up with forged paperwork. Deborah watched from her Mercedes as I called the real authorities and filmed the whole mess. By Saturday, the State Environmental Protection Agency was on the phone. Dr. Rivers' salamander research had brought in the feds. The trap was closing from all directions: legal fraud, conspiracy, environmental violations. That night, I got a call from Jim. "Marcus, get down to the bridge. She's not waiting for the town hall." Under portable floodlights, Deborah was directing a demolition crew, forged documents in hand. I shouted them down. The operators saw sparked on my hidden steel reinforcements. The news crews showed up, live coverage as the sheriff arrived, stopped the work, and watched me play trail cam footage of Stephen's sabotage for the whole neighborhood. It was the final act in her criminal circus. The sheriff started making arrests on the spot. The town hall 6 hours later was standing room only. County supervisors, news crews, neighbors who'd been manipulated for months. They all heard the whole truth. I showed the water rights map, the condo plans, the forged bank loans, the sabotage footage. County Attorney Torres announced the subdivision had been built and operated on fraudulent water rights. Deborah's firm was facing criminal conspiracy and environmental charges, and the HOA was being dissolved. Neighbors who once crossed the street to avoid me were now shaking my hand. 6 months later, I'm sitting on the bridge, watching my grandson learn to fish from the same railings where his great-great-grandfather did. Deborah's serving 18 months in federal prison. Her company's bankrupt. The HOA is gone, replaced with a transparent group that actually serves the community. My bridge? Now a national landmark, featured in a documentary about fighting HOA abuse. The restitution from Deborah's fraud settlement funds a scholarship for engineering students. Maria Santos, first recipient, is focusing on historic preservation. Dr. Rivers' Salamander Project is federally funded. The creek is protected, thriving, and our annual Bridge Festival draws families from across the state. Most important, I found a new calling, helping other families fight back against HOA bullies. The legal precedents we set are being used across the country. People send thank you letters, photos of their own saved properties. My wife runs workshops on knowing your deed, and local politicians are pushing reform laws. My daughter lives 2 blocks away. Her kid's growing up knowing that when someone comes for what's yours, you fight back, even if it takes every ounce of stubbornness you've got. The neighborhood's better for what we went through. There's still drama, like when Mrs. Patterson discovered the city wanted her garden for a parking lot. But now, folks know how to stand up. If you've got your own HOA nightmare, drop it in the comments. I read everyone. Sometimes justice is slow, but when it finally shows up, it's sweeter than revenge. And sometimes, the best way forward is remembering where you came from and fighting like hell to keep it for those who come after.